So thank you everyone for tuning in. I'm with Dr. Latika Nath. In a bit, I'll tell you after I finish my marketing spiel, I'll tell you about her, though she doesn't need much introduction. Quickly, this is the final volume of our Destination Discovery series, and usually we try and keep lodge owners, but Latika was a part of Rare India for a very long time. She continues to be, and very soon she'll be coming up with a slew of lodges, which we will be privileged to be promoting under Rare India. This is volume 4, as luck would have it. It's about our lodges and nature retreats. We call them as Friends of the Forest because in a brilliant stroke of luck and providence, I think one of the first lodges that came on board, which was also something Latika was involved in, was a lodge that kind of endorsed a lot of our conservation tourism values. That kind of set the pace for what Rare does, especially where our wildlife and nature retreats are concerned. And we aptly call them as Friends of the Forest. Whether it is to be treading lightly on the environment, protecting it, involving the communities, coming up with fantastic and creative ideas to be promoting wildlife tourism to these protected areas and national parks. These lodge owners, these Friends of the Forest, just do this amazingly well. It is almost second nature to them. Sitting on the eve of June 5th, which is the World Environment Day, we cannot but stress the importance of biodiversity, which, by the way, is the theme for this year's Environment Day 2020. And it is a pleasure to have Latika with me. So Latika is a, I mean, she has, there is her profile or her, the list of her achievements probably runs into several pages. Some of them are, of course, that she's an intrepid traveler, something which is of great interest to everybody who will be listening in. She's been to, I mean, almost about 80% of the globe you must have covered by now, Latika. She's also a conservation biologist. She is and also a conservation photographer. She has been one of the few people who have worked with tigers in their habitat when she was doing her thesis on tiger conservation, right, Latika?
Yeah.
And she is a diver. She's also an underwater photographer and an author. And one thing which not many people know about, but I've had the privilege of seeing, is that she's equally fabulous with her art photography, right? So the purpose of this chat, Latika, is just to have a lot of fun, like we used to have when we used to go around for our marketing calls, but also to delve into your life around wildlife and the national parks that you have worked in, both as a researcher, as a student, and also as a lodge owner. And more curiously, what I'd like to highlight and bring to the people who have tuned in is the creativity you brought to this. And I have done, for the last 15 years, I've been marketing a lot of wildlife lodges and other hotels as well under Rare India. But the kind of creativity that you brought into marketing, in creating narratives, has been spectacular. So let's begin. So let's talk about your first forays into the jungles of central India or elsewhere. I mean, also Jammu and Kashmir. I want to know that story.
Wow. Thanks, Shobha. I mean, that's quite an introduction. I think basically I'm just a great friend. I think
I wanted to say that is the most important thing. Yes, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So my first trip into the jungles, according to my parents, was when I was 3 months old. Okay. And I was put into a basket, and I had a fat Nepali Aya called Fatima, and she carried me on her head in a basket when my dad was going fishing in Kashmir. So that was my first trip into the wild, and I think that was it. I mean, I was hooked, and yes. That's, it was decided early on, and I think I was the fortunate few, who discovered what they're really born to do. And I think I was born to be in the outdoors, and I just sort of decided that was the path and stuck to it through whatever came at me along the way. I never thought I'd, run a lodge or do anything like that. I never thought I'd be a photographer. I thought I'd be like, Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey and study some species forever and ever and ever and live there and die there. That was it. That was my dream. But life takes you on this curious journey, and you learn all sorts of things on the way. I took this crazy trip when I was 21 from Delhi to Bandhavgarh in a friend's borrowed gypsy. And those are the days of no mobile phones and no connectivity, and Bandhavgarh was still out in the yonks. And my parents said, "Aya le jao saath mein," because at least there'd be somebody.
Where are you going?
Yeah, where you're going. So I had me and I had this Aya, and we went in this gypsy across to Madhya Pradesh, and that was when I fell in love with Madhya Pradesh. I mean, Bandhavgarh in those days was this magical dreamland. There was nobody there. There'd be days when I'd be the only person in the park. The elephants would be waiting on standby that somebody would come and say hello to them, and maybe go on them into the park. I had permission to go into the park day and night. Every part of the park, that time only Tala was open, not the rest of the ranges. So it was surreal. It was unbelievable. I mean,
unbelievable. I can't believe it. Yeah.
So I was like, I personally knew 35 tigers. I knew them by name. I knew them by character. Wow. I knew them by habits. And you could come to me and say, "I want to meet so-and-so." And I would take you to more or less where they are, get out of the car, walk there and say, "Okay, either they're here or they'll be here soon." And wow. That sort of, connectivity with the park was just amazing. There were sights and sounds and memories from that time that I find very difficult to explain to people. A lot of people today go into the park as tourists and as photographers in the field. They know the park well, but not my park.
Yes, I know
little corners of it, and it was so special. But not only did I know the park, but I also developed bonds with the people.
Yes, which is very important.
That is the special thing, I still Absolutely. Know that I can go to Kuttapan's house in Bandhavgarh and his wife will make me the best idlis I ever eat. And I can ring up and say, "Bhabhi, I'm coming." And, it's 30 years later, but that bond is still there.
It's still there, yeah.
Yeah. So that bond is what taught me about what life in the jungles was all about.
Yes.
And the fact that most of us came in, we lived in this little bubble, and we had very little to do with the real life of the people living there.
Yeah.
And I also grew to understand that fancy lodges were enclosed in a Lakshman Rekha. And most people stood on the outside of that Lakshman Rekha and had nothing to do with the lodge unless they applied to do a job in the lodge.
In the lodge, yeah.
Yeah, so they would never in their lives be able to be a guest at that lodge or going to the park or eat a meal at the table. These were just things that never happened,
Yeah.
So it was that realization that shaped the way I planned for an immersive guest experience at Singinava in Kanha when that happened.
Absolutely.
And that, so, I realized that we're so fortunate because we have all of these tribal communities that live around us. And we normally, you'll have one tribal dance or you'll talk about some gond painting and the matter ends there. But in
Yes.
those days, there was not even too many patrons of Gond art.
Yes.
You know, and people would come up to me and say, "Khane ko nahi hai. Will you buy a painting from us?" Doing that, I've personally collected over 180 pieces of art.
Absolutely.
You know, it's a huge collection, and I'm hoping that one day I'll be able to put it in a museum. And
You mean
know,
to say
show it.
beyond what you have in your house now, there is still a lot more that
There
is
is so much
rolled away?
rolled up. Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you
Absolutely
know,
fabulous. Yeah.
yeah, and you know, it just never stopped. And even today, I still get calls from all of these artists saying, "This is our new work. Tell us what's going on. Help us out." So I'm hoping that when I make my new lodges, there'll be, you know, a lot of participation from all of these people.
I'm
Um,
sure.
but so I wanted to actually celebrate living with these people and start documenting their traditional way of life, their indigenous knowledge of medicinal plants, the food they ate,
The
the
food they ate.
instruments they
Yeah.
played, the
Yeah.
music in, you know, that was a part of their culture, the storytelling. And that's what, you know, really transformed my lodge from being something that was out of the colonial era into showcasing a lot of this.
And a lot of this, yeah. And
Yeah.
so that kind of, I mean, that kind of brings us to the crux of this conversation is about all that creativity that you
Yeah.
brought into running the lodge, right? So
Yeah.
I have a huge list. So
Okay.
one of the first things, of course, is the festival, the Trees in Their Lives festival
Yes.
that you had organized. So let's
Yes.
talk about that, Latika. The Trees in Their Lives. That was a beautiful concept. I still remember.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a festival we did every year, and it was February or March of every year. And that was when spring hit and the sunflowers were on, and it was just a beautiful time of the year in Kana. And we wanted to celebrate how local cultures live their lives around trees. You know, they
Absolutely.
get so much from the trees, like the maua tree. It's just such an important tree for them. But it's not only just the maua tree. There are people trees, there are other trees in which they say their gods reside, the gods of the forest, the spirit
Desire.
gods.
Yes.
So you know, they respect and love and worship a lot of trees. And all of their paintings show these. You've seen the, you know, the tree of life being shown again and again and again in a lot of Gond art. When you go to their houses and you see the wall art, you see a lot of trees in it. Therefore, this strange title of Trees in Their
In
Lives.
their lives, yes.
Trees in Their Lives. And it was a festival by the local people for the local people. So one year, I mean, we actually had over 300 artists, all of whom were local people, and we had about 30 tourists. So it was just them celebrating themselves.
Says
And
why you were the travelers were just visitors or watching from
visitors.
the fringes. Yes.
Yes. So that was just the most marvelous experience. And we, of course, would shut the lodge down at that time, except for people who had pre-booked and arranged to be there at that time.
Yes.
And it was just a magical mix of festivities. We had the most amazing dancing and all of this food being prepared, and pottery, and sculpture, and children joining in. And we would have guest artists from abroad who would come and work with local artists, so that
Absolutely. So,
coming together was just so magical. And this was
yeah.
something we did for several years. It was not a one-off. And
Yes. Yes.
it was purely funded by the lodge. It was not something that we went to outside people for any funding. We paid for all of these people to come and stay, and their travel and their expenses. But it was our way of giving back to the community. We were living in their
Absolutely.
space, so it was a way of sharing with them.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So
So, which the art project also was a part of this, or you ran a separate festival
that
for
was
the
a
artists?
separate
Separate
project.
festival. Yes.
totally separate festival. There was that big crash in tiger numbers when everybody decided that, you know, India was going through another crisis with the tigers, and there was all this newspapers and everybody talking about it. And I decided that one of the nicest things to do would be to bring awareness to the world about what is going on through the medium of art. I actually had 19 artists from 16 countries across the world come together. We shut the lodge, and we had artists in residence, and there was just this amazing creativity happening with people doing sculptures and pottery, and we had Susmit Bose with his guitar and singing all this amazing music to us in the
Fantastic.
evenings. And
Yeah.
you know, we involved the local village school in this, and you know, people were just actually going out and painting in the school and doing clay modeling with the kids, and then they
Absolutely.
would go all together with the kids into the park every day, and come back influenced by what they'd seen and heard and smelt and felt to produce what they were
More
producing. And then,
producing art more.
yeah, and all of this was then auctioned, and the funds were used to produce to fund projects that the foundation was doing in the villages,
Brilliant.
on health, on education, on alternate energy, on plastic free villages. So there was a lot of stuff that we were
That was
doing.
very, yeah, you were going. The other thing I remember is that you remember the calendar in 2014,
Yes,
the
yes,
SL calendar. I still
yes.
have some of those pictures on my wall,
Wow.
you know, all of them, yeah, all of them.
Wow.
I had them framed. And then your cousin
Mm,
Shivani,
mm.
she did that dance, and you know
Yeah,
that was another initiative. Remember?
yes. So that was an initiative that started with Shivani and I, and she wanted to do a dance drama
Yes.
on the front stairs of the lodge, and it really it started off, and it was so fantastic that Anjali Ila Menon got involved, and it actually went on to become this huge project, where she was working with school children, and her daughter joined in, and mother and daughter would do these performances, and children would paint on the tiger,
Wow.
and then talk about the tiger and discuss it, and we would do these talks and shows, and she's actually gone internationally and talked to schools about this, and the beginning was in our lodge.
In Singapore, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, uh, you know, when we used to go around marketing the lodge, and you were there,
Hmm.
I know it. You know, I used to have a script saying, okay, Latika does this as activities, and suddenly you would be sitting there, and you know, things would be coming up, and I would say, oh, where did this come from? I didn't know this. There were so many ideas you brought into there, and one of them particularly was to look at the other areas of the national park. Like I remember you used to talk a lot about Fen,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Those conversations are still static, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
not many people are, but I think going forward, when we're talking about you always advocated promoting different parts of the park for different, you know, for different interests.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's not only just different parts of the park. I feel increasingly over tourism, overcrowding is going to kill the experience that you are going to the park for. So I think, you know, overcrowding on holidays, overcrowding because of a special animal being seen. For instance, the spate of sightings for the Black Panther in Nagarhole, and everybody rushing to
Rushing
that
there, yeah,
park.
yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
it's good. It's a tick mark of your bucket list if you've seen it, but it's not what going on safari is about. It's not what being in nature is about. So I think more and more we need to think about how to spread ourselves, how to have a quality experience over quantities of experience. So it's not about taking 10 2-day holidays a year, but taking one 20-day holiday a year, where you really get an immersive experience in a part of the world that nobody's gone to, and you meet people, you make friends. they remember you for the rest of their lives. You make memories that stay with you forever. And I think that's what the key of traveling is all about.
Yeah, the key of running a fantastic wildlife lodge, the whole sharing part of it.
Yes.
That, the whole idea of dining together. Remember, it used to be a big thing right from Churut Koti days. Dining together was a big thing, and now with social distancing, this whole thing of sitting together for long hours. I mean, over a gin and tonic, and ending up till about 3 o'clock at night and chatting about your stories of the jungle and various travels. That kind of forms a very important aspect of a wildlife lodge experience. Latika, the one thing I want to highlight, and for a lot of people who are watching this, is the amount of effort you put on in devising experiences for children. I remember the Pugmark casting, for instance.
Yes.
I was there once, and I had these two kids squealing with delight at what they. So let's go over things that you thought about for the children.
So I had a whole range of activities for children. I think that's where you sow the seeds of future advocates for a sustainable life. And if they fall in love with being outdoors, and they learn to respect the outdoors, it's not about using the outdoors, but it's about going out and hearing and listening and learning. And I think that's the age when you're very little, that if the basics are right at that age, then they stay with you the rest of your life. Absolutely. So whether or not I met the parents, I always met the kids. And the journey started from when a child stepped into the lodge. So there was always a special welcome and a special drink and a special cookie with their name on it. They had special little dressing gowns with little animals on them, and they could choose which one they wanted. Where somebody liked an alligator, another one wanted to be a monkey with a tail, a third one wanted to be a tiger. So it was for each one their own thing. And then we had lots of activities which focused on the outdoors. So you would take them out, you would talk to them about plants, you would show them how a seed comes out, you would show them what an earthworm did, what happens when water hits soil which is bare compared to water hitting soil which has grass on it, looking for signs, looking for stories that are written in the dust, listening to messages that are being sung out by the birds, smelling the smells of the forest, learning to tap into your inner sixth sense. This is what you need to show a child. And this, this is what a jungle experience is truly about. So to be able to understand that you have a Pugmark that is crisp and fresh, and to be able to judge how old it is by seeing that an ant has walked across it, to be able to notice those little details, to take children away from their screens, because increasingly the screen is their world. To take the children away from that and expose them to dust and dirt and soil, and having their feet planted on the ground barefoot. And to be able to feel the earth. That was really important. And we also did a lot of things like having games. So we would do traditional Indian games, and sometimes involve the village school children with it, so they could actually learn to do that. So we would do kite making with rice glue, the traditional way that we used to do it, and kite fighting. We would do, making flower necklaces for the girls to wear, the old traditional way. We would do pittu and gulli danda and kho-kho, things that you and I grew up with when we were growing up in non-urban environments, and those things are lost now. So that's the sort of thing that we would do. So we would also go out with binoculars. We would go out and go to the river and look for little tadpoles.
Tadpoles, yes, I
Yeah.
remember that.
And fireflies and trying to understand why fireflies like one tree and not another tree.
Yeah.
And wolf spiders and looking at how dew forms on spiders' webs. So a whole world of magic out there, and
Yes,
everything
yeah.
had a story, and that's how you told them. And then they came back, and then they wrote a story, or they did a painting.
And all the
or
cards
something
that
like
came, yeah, and all the cards that were left for you, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah. And another lovely initiative, which I remember one guest saying that she had tears in her eyes, is that you encouraged guests to take one child from the village school so that they can see what a forest looked like
Yes.
on a safari. Yeah.
Mm. So I talked to the park and I said, I know you have all these rules and you want everything pre-booked and we can't do last minute additions. But, if somebody is booked an exclusive safari and they're going into the park and they have 2 seats free in their car, then why can't, without prior notice, they take 2 children from the village school into the park with them on one of their safaris? And we promised that there would be a letter from the school principal and some form of ID for the children. And we would, pay whatever cost we had to, the minimum cost for the children. The park wonderfully said they're not going to take any money for these children going in.
Fantastic.
And
yeah.
it wouldn't cost the people going in anything to take 2 children with them. So it was a win-win all around. And to have this little child with you who is just got stars in his eyes and a smile on her face because she's managed to cross the Lakshman Rekha to go into the park.
Yes.
It was just the most magical time. And many of them never see a tiger in their whole lives, even though the tiger walks through their village streets every night, but they never see it. So just to see a tiger makes them understand what they were the guardians of and what role they had. So I think that was just really special. And I used to call these the Mowgli safaris because all these little ones are little Mowglis. So yeah.
Latika, there are a couple of questions which I would tell you. Of course, we have our common friends here. Divya is here. Andila says, my 2 favorite ladies are here. One person asked me, and I know this is, this is just quite a sad this thing. Somebody wanted to know about the elephant issue that's happened in Kerala, which quite a sad one. And so they want to know what you think.
Okay. So the wild boar menace is a huge menace if you're a farmer, and we don't have an adequate system of crop insurance and crop protection. People can lose an entire year's income in a few hours overnight if wild boar or other predators like nilgai come into your field and destroy the crops. So in desperation, many farmers would put homemade crackers into things like pineapples and leave them in the fields, thinking that if wild boar came in and ate these, they would blow up the wild boar and protect their crops. Unfortunately, this female elephant wandered into one of these fields. She was pregnant and she ate one of these pineapples, which then subsequently exploded in her mouth. It shattered her jaw and damaged her mouth considerably, so she couldn't eat after that, and she was in severe pain. Now, elephants can travel long distances. We think she traveled quite a bit, maybe for several days, until she was finally so weak and she had this baby in her that she went into water because the water helps her buffer herself up. The forest department was informed. They went to try and rescue her, but it just became too late at that point. So this is a typical problem that we describe as human-wildlife conflict and one of the extremely painful, sad fallouts of this conflict. We're hoping that the government will finally sit up and take notice of issues like this. There are wonderful people who work on these issues. There's people like Vidya Triya, Kriti Karan, me myself. There's a lot of us who are working on human-wildlife conflict. We're hoping that the government and the Prime Minister will finally sit up, listen to us, and help us find an easier way out.
Like a policy or like a regulation.
A way of dealing with it and helping people in crop protection, crop compensation, dealing with animals like the wild boar who have become a menace and a pest, because farmers simply don't have the means to fence their fields and protect them against these animals. So we need to find a solution to helping them with their crops. Even if it's you can look for alternate cropping patterns. You can give them crop insurance. There's a whole lot of things that you can do.
Yeah, and how can we all support, like signing these petitions, and is there some kind of a petition going on that people can sign? I saw something changed.
There are petitions that are going on. We just need the pressure to increase. We want journalists to write more about it, but we want the right message going out. The story is not that anybody in India would hand a pineapple with a cracker in it to an elephant. It's just not possible. As a nation, we've always loved the elephant. It's not about caste, creed, religion, gender, what part of the world, country you're from. We love our elephants. Nobody would ever do that. It's just a horrible thing that's happened. But it's not to say that the wild boar suffers any less. So we need to find a solution to the problem. The wild boar may not be as iconic as an elephant, but it's just a horrible way to die. I think we need to find solutions that prevent people from resorting to extreme measures
like this. Thank you, Latika. That was a very, very logical thought to this, because it's been going on so much in social media. It just makes me sick. Every time I see this elephant, it's just been terrible, actually.
It's a haunting
incident. And thank you for putting that in perspective. We are we're actually we've overshot our time again, but on a more interesting note, you remember this.
Of course.
So, these just to say that how lodges can actually be envisaged and created around children and their interests, right? This is a little reminder about the tiger paw cookies that he used to make.
But Shobha, it wasn't just the children. I had adults taking them.
I know.
Asking for boxes to take home.
Take home. I know. Yes.
Yeah. So this is a fantastic story as well, because I had this waiter, and we were complaining about not having enough variety in our desserts, and I wish we could get somebody good to do it. And this guy comes up to me and says, "Ma'am, I used to work in a halwai dukan, and I think I can do good desserts. So can I make you my gulab jamuns?" And he made the most mind-blowing gulab jamuns, okay? And he's a waiter. So I promptly shifted him from waitering back into the
kitchen.
Hotel, into the kitchen. And then I trained him personally to make about 40 different types of desserts. And then one day I had gone to Bandhavgarh, and there was little brass pug with little, tiger pug marks on them. And I came back, and he was making these shortbread cookies. And I said, "Hey, Sunil, let's try something fun." And we used a little mold to make these little pug mark cookies and fill them with bitter chocolate. and they were just mouth-wateringly amazing and a big hit. And it was just one of those things that took off.
Yeah, I know. And he made great banoffee pie, if you remember.
Yes,
Yes.
and he's still there with me.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so
Yeah, I know. Fantastic,
yeah,
Latika.
12 years
So,
down the line.
I'm sure. So it is fantastic talking to you. Would you like to add something about your future projects? What are you,
So I
what
think,
are you
Shobha,
doing now?
one of the things that we need to talk about is the project that one of the projects that you and I are embarking on, because we seem to have a lot happening,
Happening, yes.
of particular interest to all the people who work with you, is our series on the historical boutique properties.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Which
So
I've
I
listed,
mean,
yeah.
that is a really incredible project. The idea being that we pinpoint these wonderful owner-run, pampered, treasured homes that have been open to guests across India,
Yes.
and their experiences of the real India,
Yes.
the life of people as they live today in India, and an immersive experience into culture and a lifestyle that you wouldn't ever be able to get in any other circumstances. So we want to
Absolutely.
find these hidden rare gems and do a whole series on these, a whole series of stories, a whole series of experiences, a whole story of images of how something has been standing for, you know,
Many
many
hundred
years,
years. Yeah,
many
yeah,
100 years, some of them,
yeah.
and has been lovingly restored back into this living masterpiece.
His
So,
masterpiece and
yeah,
transformed into a hospitality
yes,
offering. Yeah,
into
yeah.
a
That,
boutique
yes,
hotels.
we've still been working on that, and I sent you
Yeah,
the list of hotels, and I think that
yeah,
is going to be an interesting project.
yeah.
Um,
So if
so
anybody has any names or interesting stories to share, please write to Shobha and me, and that would be amazing.
Absolutely wonderful. Yeah,
Yeah.
Latika, tomorrow is the World Environment Day,
Mm-hmm.
and you have a message for people listening in. What can each one of us do to protect and to preserve the immense and beautiful biodiversity which we've all been gifted with? And we probably, a lot of us are not even aware that this is a gift for us, right?
Well, I mean, we're all connected with the hospitality industry. I think we need to realize that just having no little plastic bottles with a shampoo in the bathroom is not going to cut ice anymore. It's a lot more than that. It's not good enough to just say you're green. It's not good enough to say uh, you're using alternate energy because you have one solar panel up somewhere. The new generation of traveler needs a lot more than that. I think it's also more for yourself and your own soul, and for the future generations that are depending on you. So I think it's about devising your entire hospitality experience in a way that is not use and discard. I think that's very important.
Yes.
Go back to the way our grandparents and our great grandparents used to live, where everything was recycled, everything was
Everything was
reused,
reused, repaired.
repaired. And then when you didn't have use for it, you gave it to somebody else who used it, or you gave it
Yes.
to a kabadi. It was
Yes.
not dumped in a trash can outside your house. I think you need to remember all of that and revive that way of living and show it in all that you do. So reduce your dependence on prepackaged goods. Remember to do farm to fork. Remember to grow organic vegetables, even if it's just dhania in a pot. Grow your own. The joy of it, that you snip it in front of a guest, wash it, and put it on their food right then and there, makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
Go back to organic. go back to made in your locality. Try and focus on a small area that produces most of the things that you need. These are the things that are important. And above all, remember that the best thing to do in the hospitality industry, especially in boutique properties, is to become a great storyteller. Remember to note these down and tell your stories, share your stories.
Yeah. Thank you, Latika. That was
My
fantastic.
pleasure.
Yeah, we could keep talking forever, but thank you so much for joining in.
My
and
pleasure.
thank you everyone for tuning in. Like I said, tomorrow is the World Environment Day. Think back, look into what you're doing. Every one of us can contribute, and then which means that every day can be an environment day and a day for the environment, right? This is the last in the series of Destination Discovery, and it gives me immense pleasure to have Latika with us. We are Rare India is proudly a member of the Responsible Tourism Society of India, an association that is committed to bringing sustainability into the way we do our travel and hospitality businesses. Stay tuned in. There are more coming up by next week. Thank you so much. Thank you, Latika.
Thanks, Shobha, for keeping me a part of Rare.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye.